please.
Yeah.
Okay, and just listen to what this officer's going to say to you.
Mate, it's 5:35. Yeah. I'm arresting you on the confession of the murder of Alexandra Morgan. Okay? We believe that you were the last person that Alexandra Morgan seemed to be alive with.
This is the case of a woman whose final hours were caught on surveillance cameras, but she was never found. Where did she go? And who was she with? The truth turned out to be far more terrifying than anyone could have ever imagined. Let's dive back into this story and uncover the chilling mystery of Alexandra Morgan. Alexandra Morgan, often known simply as Alex to her loved ones, was a single mother of two, a 4-year-old and an 11-year-old. She lived in Cranbrook, Kent's Wisley Pound area, and life wasn't easy. She had no ongoing relationships with her children's fathers and faced the struggles of raising her kids alone. Alex worked as a dog groomer, and those who knew her described her as an ambitious, lively woman who only wanted a better life for her children. On November 13th, 2021, Alexandra made plans to meet her parents. She told them she was going on a spa trip with friends and left her 2 kids in their care, promising to return in 3 days. But when November 17th came and Alexandra still hadn't picked up her kids and wasn't answering calls or texts, her parents began to panic. This was completely out of character. After multiple attempts to find her failed, the family contacted police. Right away, Kent police sensed that something wasn't right. There were signs suggesting a potential crime. Investigators tried to determine which spa Alexandra had planned to visit and who she was meeting, but they soon realized the case was far more complicated than they could have imagined. As part of their investigation, police obtained CCTV footage from a local gas station. This was the last confirmed sighting of Alexandra, and her white Mini Cooper was a crucial lead. The footage showed Alexandra on the morning of November 14th. She stopped for gas, grabbed a coffee and a snack, and then drove off. Everything about the footage seemed normal at first glance. Rose McCaw, the gas station manager and a longtime friend of Alexandra's, served her that morning. Rose recalled that Alex looked more put together than usual. Her hair was done, makeup applied, stylish clothes on. And it was very early in the morning, which was odd for Alexandra. As the investigation continued, police learned about something deeply troubling. In 2018, Alexandra had posted online that she was being stalked. "Stop stalking my page," she wrote. "You're making it more obvious by the day." Another post in 2019 hinted at her fear, but also her determination not to be intimidated. At this point, detectives couldn't rule out the possibility that Alexandra's stalker might be connected to her disappearance. They publicly appealed for information, urging anyone who had seen Alexandra or her white Mini Cooper with a black roof to come forward. She was described as 5 feet 6 inches, thin, with shoulder-length brown hair. At the time she disappeared, she was wearing a silver necklace, rugged black pants, knee-high black boots, and a green quilted coat. Now, many missing persons cases sadly go unsolved. But this time, police had something critical on their side: digital footprints. Through phone records and online activity, investigators made a startling discovery. In an attempt to better her financial situation, Alexandra had secretly begun working as an escort, advertising her services online. None of her friends or family had known. It's no secret that women working in this industry often face enormous risks, and tragically, Alexandra had recently arranged a meeting with one of her regular clients. That man was later identified as Mark Brown. On November 25th, 2021, police arrested a 40-year-old man from St. Leonards-on-Sea on suspicion of murder. Mark Brown was a construction worker, married, and a father, living a double life his own family knew nothing about. Investigators uncovered a chilling pattern. Brown had met Alexandra several times through escorting arrangements, and he had even given her a Mini Cooper at one point. Their meetings had mostly taken place at a secluded property Brown rented, Little Bridge Farm in Hastings, Kent. In late October 2021, Brown messaged Alexandra with an enticing offer, an escorting job that could pay up to £100,000 for just 3 to 5 days' work. He promised her a new ID, a clean car, and shopping money. It was everything Alexandra could hope for. The chance to finally buy a home for her kids. Her Google search history showed her excitement and hope. How much is the minimum deposit for a house? How much money can you make running a sunbed shop? How much tax would I pay on £100,000? On November 14th, Alexandra wasn't headed to a spa. She was driving to Little Bridge Farm to meet Mark Brown, a decision that would cost her life. Surveillance showed Alexandra's Mini Cooper following behind Brown's Jaguar that morning. When police questioned Brown, he admitted meeting Alexandra that day, but claimed she left after 45 minutes. Yet evidence soon proved otherwise. A few days later, a horrifying discovery was made. On Brown's property, inside a burnt barrel, were human teeth and bone fragments. DNA testing confirmed they belonged to Alexandra Morgan. As investigators dug deeper into Brown's past, they uncovered an even more horrifying possibility. Alexandra wasn't his only victim. There was another missing woman, a 33-year-old named Leah Ware. Leah was a mother of 3, an animal lover, and another woman Brown had met through an escorting website. She had even lived with Brown at Little Bridge Farm, in a shipping container. Leah disappeared in May 2021, 6 months before Alexandra. Brown's twisted writings revealed even more. In letters to an old lover, he hinted at gruesome actions. It happened again not too long ago, disposing of something. It gets very hot and glows practically white. He chillingly referred to himself as a psychopath with a conscience. Despite exhaustive searches, Leah's body was never found. But police did recover bones belonging to her beloved dog, suggesting she too had met a tragic fate. In February 2022, Mark Brown was charged with Leah Ware's murder as well, even though her body remains missing to this day. During his trial in October 2022, prosecutors laid out the full, horrifying story. Ultimately, Brown was found guilty of murdering both Alexandra Morgan and Leah Ware, sentencing him to life behind bars. 2 women, gone forever, both lured into the clutches of a man who presented himself as a client, but was really a cold-blooded killer. November 2022. Deep in the wilderness of Marion County, Oregon, a discovery was made, one that would send shockwaves through a small, tight-knit community. The body of a young man, missing for nearly a month, was found alone in the woods. He had a single gunshot wound to his stomach. There were no witnesses, no note, no clear answers, just silence. The young man was Miles Stanton. He was only 21 years old. Miles was born and raised in Tualatin, Oregon, in a close-knit, loving family. He was the youngest of 3. A quiet soul with a deep bond to his mother, Laura Stanton, who had always been his anchor. His father, David, described him as thoughtful, a listener, not a talker. Someone who soaked in the world with a contemplative mind. His siblings, Emily and Jordan, remember his dry sense of humor and his love for the outdoors, camping, fishing, hiking. That's where Miles was happiest. They called him an old soul. A young man who found peace in solitude, especially in nature. After high school, Miles took time to explore. He wasn't in a rush to follow the traditional path. He worked odd jobs, journaled, taught himself photography, and he chased wild rivers where he could fly fish, completely alone. His family supported him, even when they worried about how quiet he could be, how hard it was to get him to open up. In 2022, Miles made a small move to Aurora, Oregon, hoping for new inspiration. But he stayed close. He texted regularly. He called his mom, often. So when he suddenly went silent, it set off alarm bells. October 20th, 2022. Miles left his apartment. Surveillance later caught him at a 76 gas station. He walked in, bought snacks. Nothing seemed off. But right after that, his phone went dark. He missed a check-in call with his mom. That was unlike him. Hours turned into a day into 2. His family reported him missing immediately. Laura, his mother, led the charge. She organized search efforts, shared his story online, and created a campaign called Searching Miles for Miles. The community rallied. People searched. They hoped. They waited. 4 weeks later, their worst fears became reality. Miles's body was found in a secluded wooded area. 1 gunshot wound to the abdomen. There was no weapon nearby, no suicide note, no sign of a struggle, just Miles, alone in the woods. The police considered suicide. But to those who knew him, that didn't make any sense. No history of mental illness, no recent trauma. He had plans. He talked about photography projects. He was excited about the next fly fishing season. So, why the stomach? Why an unusual method for someone allegedly taking their own life? And where was the gun? Laura Stanton keeps asking those questions, but the answers haven't come. The sheriff's office says the case is ongoing, but the family feels alone in the search for truth. More than a year has passed. No closure, no new evidence, no justice. Miles Stanton was deeply loved by his family, by his friends. His life mattered, and his story matters. What happened to Miles Stanton in the quiet woods of Oregon? And why does no one seem to know? It was a quiet Friday evening in June 2023 when 22-year-old Sophie Rebecca Lambert left her home in Starbeck, a peaceful suburb of Harrogate, North Yorkshire. The time was around 7:06 p.m. She posted her keys through the letterbox and stepped out into the fading evening light. That was the last time her family saw her. Not long after, CCTV footage captured her walking alone. She was wearing dark trousers, a black top with a white Adidas logo, and dark shoes with white soles. Her hair was tied back, and in her hand, she carried a bottle with a pink lid, a small detail, but one her loved ones immediately recognized. Sophie was known for her deep love of animals, especially her 2 little chihuahuas, Boston and Bentley. She had a vibrant, quirky personality, the kind of person who proudly wore mismatched socks and said, "Life's too short to match them." But beneath that colorful exterior, Sophie was battling something much heavier. She had faced trauma early in life, trauma that led to a diagnosis of complex PTSD and emotionally unstable personality disorder. Her struggles with mental health were profound. Over the years, she'd been admitted to psychiatric hospitals nearly 30 times. The morning after her disappearance, a member of the public found some of Sophie's belongings near the River Nid, at Nid Gorge. Her mobile phone, her bank card, and a jumper. That discovery triggered a major search operation, with police, rescue teams, helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers from the community, all coming together with one goal: to bring Sophie home. 5 days later, on June 21st, the search came to a heartbreaking end. Sophie's body was discovered in the River Nid near Knaresborough. A post-mortem later confirmed she had drowned, with cocaine intoxication listed as a contributing factor. An inquest into her death revealed not just a tragedy, but a pattern. Sophie had repeatedly tried to get help, and again, she fell through the cracks. In fact, during the inquest, it came out that a mental health worker once referred to her as a fat nuisance. She wasn't a nuisance. She was a young woman trying to survive in a world that had often been far too cruel to her. The coroner ruled her death as suicide, the result of trauma, combined with years of systemic failures in her mental health care. Her funeral was nothing short of a tribute to the light she brought. White horses dressed in purple, her favorite color, pulled the carriage that carried her. Her little dogs wore jumpers that said, "My mummy is in heaven." Family and friends wore odd socks, just like she always did. Sophie Rebecca Lambert was more than a name in a headline. She was a daughter, a friend, a dog mom, and a fighter. Her story, her struggle, is a powerful call to action for compassion and reform in mental health care. And perhaps, in sharing her story, we can prevent another one like it, because everyone deserves to be seen, everyone deserves to be heard, and no one should have to fight alone. Imagine this: you leave your home on a cool September morning. No phone, no wallet, not even a pair of keys. You step outside for what should be a routine walk through your neighborhood, something you've done 100 times before. You're calm, you're focused, and just like that, you vanish. No one sees where you go, no one knows what happened, and days turn into weeks, weeks into months, with no trace, no answers, only questions. This is the story of Tyler Weathersby, a young father, a husband, a son, who seemingly walked off the face of the earth in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and hasn't been seen since. Tyler Weathersby was just 31 years old when he vanished. He wasn't some drifter or troubled loner. He was a family man, someone who had recently stepped into fatherhood with immense pride and joy. In March 2024, he and his wife, Mona Lisa Perez, welcomed a beautiful baby daughter. According to Mona Lisa, Tyler was over the moon, deeply present and loving. He had a routine life. He took daily walks, not out of necessity, but for clarity. He found peace in them. He was calm, reflective, and deeply connected to his small family unit. They lived together in a quiet Sioux Falls neighborhood, not far from West Madison Street and North Marion Road, a place where people knew their neighbors, where unexpected events were rare. But as summer drew to a close in 2024, those close to Tyler began noticing small changes in his behavior. He seemed a little more distracted, a little less grounded. His mother, Janine, had flown into town for a visit. But during that time, something odd happened. Tyler suddenly insisted on taking her to the airport, a day earlier than planned, and what should have been a normal conversation turned into a confusing back and forth. According to family members, his voice sounded off. He wasn't making sense. He was talking in circles, unlike the Tyler they knew. Was it stress? Mental fatigue? Something deeper? No one knew, but nobody expected what would happen next. September 4th, 2024. It started like any other morning. Tyler got up, dressed in his usual walking gear, a white t-shirt, black shorts, and a tan beanie, and headed out around 7:45 a.m. He didn't bring his phone. He didn't take his wallet. He didn't even have his keys. Surveillance footage captured him walking east, near West Madison Street and North Marion Road, toward the I-29 interstate. There were no signs of distress. He didn't look panicked. His pace was steady. And then, he was gone. At first, Mona Lisa wasn't alarmed. Tyler often took long walks, sometimes up to an hour or more. But by midday, when he hadn't returned and hadn't responded to messages, her concern grew. By 4:30 p.m., Mona Lisa filed a missing person report with the Sioux Falls Police Department. She and other family members retraced his steps, spoke to neighbors, checked security footage, and began the search themselves. Authorities joined in quickly. They used drones, reviewed local surveillance, and chased down over 100 individual tips, but each lead went nowhere. Tyler's wife, Mona Lisa Perez, has been relentless in her search for answers. She shared her pain, her confusion, and her heartbreak publicly, hoping someone, somewhere, knows something. In her own words, Tyler is the kind of person who would never just leave. He loved being a dad. He couldn't wait to see our daughter grow up. He was proud to be a father. We were building a life together, and he would never choose to miss those moments. Something happened to him, and I need to know what it was. There's no shortage of theories around Tyler's disappearance. Some believe mental health may have played a role. Others wonder whether he may have suffered a medical emergency, like a seizure or disorientation, and collapsed somewhere remote. And then, there's the darker possibility that someone may have harmed him, that Tyler's disappearance wasn't a solitary act, but one involving foul play. But here's the troubling part. There's no physical evidence, no body, no belongings, no confirmed sightings after that morning. It's as if Tyler simply vanished, and without a phone or wallet on him, there's no trail, no pings, no transactions, no movement. As of today, Tyler Weathersby is still officially missing. Authorities say they're still investigating, but no major updates have been released. The case remains open, but cold.
Our case files, the steps we've taken, the things we've done, and have come back with, yeah, we're covering all the angles. There was no new avenues or things that they suggested trying, and that includes both local and federal agencies that we've had take a look at it.
His family has not given up. They continue to post updates, organize search efforts, and plead for answers. The Sioux Falls Police Department has asked anyone with information to contact them directly at 605-3677-212. Anonymous tips can also be submitted to Crime Stoppers at 605-3677-007. And Tyler's family is still waiting. Max Greenfield was last seen on March 17, 2018, staying with his family in Brookings, Oregon. He had a routine, crossing the state line into Smith River, California, to visit the Lucky 7 casino. On March 16th, he shared a drink with his sister, Tanya. Then she dropped him off at their mother Andrea's house. As usual, Andrea laid out his medication on the kitchen counter and said goodnight around 10 p.m. The next morning, when Andrea left for work at 6 a.m., those pills were still there, completely untouched. But that wasn't alarming. Max rarely woke that early. He and Tanya had plans to see a movie that afternoon, yet when Tanya texted to confirm, there was no reply. By 2 p.m., Andrea came home to the same sight, the medication still on the counter, exactly as she'd left it. Heart pounding, she called Tanya. No sign of Max. They checked with friends, but no one had seen him. 2 days later, Andrea filed a missing person report with the Curry County Sheriff's Office. Then investigators discovered Max had texted friends after arriving home, asking for a ride back to the casino. Casino CCTV shows Max walking in at around 1 a.m. He steps back outside through the rear door, and at 1:50 a.m., he's captured speaking with a man. They exchange a few words, then walk south across the parking lot, together. And that's the last anyone saw of Max Greenfield. The man in the footage told police they parted ways after leaving the casino, but detectives believe something went terribly wrong soon after. Today, Max's family is offering a $5,000 reward for any information that leads to answers. Max is described as 6 feet tall, about 160 pounds, with brown hair and blue eyes, and a distinctive skeleton key tattoo on his left forearm. He wore black jeans, a dark t-shirt, a black jacket, and a black beanie that night, carrying a black duffel bag. If you know anything, please call Detective Jaron Gill at 707-465-2468. Someone out there holds the missing piece. Let's bring Max home. In the peaceful heart of County Kerry, Ireland, a mystery lingers. The disappearance of 56-year-old Michael, or Mike, Gaine, has left his family and his tight-knit community grappling with uncertainty. Mike was no stranger to the land he called home. A hard-working sheep and beef farmer, well known for his quiet demeanor and strong work ethic. The morning of March 20th, 2025, seemed like any other. At 9:48 a.m., Mike was spotted at White's Centra store in Kenmare, buying some phone credit. He wore an orange beanie, a black fleece, jeans, and boots. Casual, comfortable. He even seemed to be in good spirits. Then, he drove off in his bronze Toyota RAV4. No one knew it would be the last time he was seen. Later that day, his vehicle was found abandoned near his farm at Carrig East. Inside, his wallet and phone were left behind. But Mike himself was gone. No signs of a struggle, no obvious clues, just a chilling silence. Since that fateful day, the search for Mike has been massive. Over 250 volunteers, the Gardaí, the army, drones buzzing overhead, helicopters slicing through the Irish skies. They've combed through fields, woods, rugged terrain, all around the farm and beyond. But despite their tireless efforts, there's been no sign of Mike. The investigation has taken many twists and turns. The Gardaí made heartfelt public appeals, begging for anyone with even the smallest piece of information to come forward. They made a special plea to local cycling clubs, hoping someone might have seen Mike that morning, somewhere along Moles Gap Road. They've gathered over 100 witness statements, reviewed more than 1,500 hours of footage. And still, the mystery only deepens. No evidence of foul play has been found, but no solid answers either. Gardaí remain hopeful. They continue to chase down new leads, keeping an open mind, never giving up. What happened to Mike? Why did he vanish without a trace? Could someone, somewhere, hold the missing piece to this heartbreaking puzzle? As of today, April 26, 2025, the search continues. Mike's family, his friends, the people of Kenmare, they refuse to let his story fade. They wait, they search, and they hope that someday soon they'll know what happened to the man they knew and loved. If you have any information, no matter how small, the Gardaí urge you to come forward. The search for Mike Gaine is far from over, and your voice could make all the difference. 29-year-old Rory Johnson Hatfield was out enjoying a night in the city of York, a place he knew very well. Rory worked alongside his father, helping run the family restaurant back in Skipton. He was sociable, warm, and he loved visiting York to unwind and celebrate with friends. On November 19th, 2015, Rory was in high spirits as he boarded a train to the city. He was heading in to witness the annual Christmas lights switch on, an event that draws thousands of people every year. He had a room booked at the York Central Travelodge on Piccadilly Street, where he planned to stay the night with friends. At some point during the evening, Rory, ever the friendly type, met two other hotel guests, and the group began drinking and celebrating together. Around midnight, Rory briefly returned to the hotel, but by 12:15 a.m., he was heading back out, this time with just one other man. They walked to a nearby pub, but Rory left again not long after, at about 12:30 a.m., and from that moment on, he was never seen again. Police were able to piece together a rough timeline using CCTV footage. At 12:32, Rory is spotted with his friend, walking along Tower Street. Then, at 12:38, another camera shows him alone, crossing Skeldergate Bridge, leaving York's city centre. Minutes later, Rory is seen once more, near the City Mills Flats on the opposite side of the river. In these last clips, Rory is alone. Some reports suggest he may have been running, but from the footage available, he appears to be walking calmly through the quiet night streets. Now here's where it gets concerning. To reach the balcony area outside of City Mills Flats, the place where he was last seen, Rory would have needed to climb a 6-foot wall, That same area overlooks a river. Some have speculated that he may have fallen in, or perhaps even entered the water himself. Extensive searches followed, with both canine and human teams involved. But despite every effort, there was no trace of Rory. Because of flooding in November 2015, search operations were paused, resumed, and paused again. The York rescue boat team also scoured the waters, but again, nothing. To this day, no evidence of Rory has been recovered, not in the rivers, and not anywhere else. While the official investigation has long focused on the river, Rory's family continues to believe that he might still be out there. They continue to post regular updates in a dedicated Facebook group. Rory Johnson Hatfield is missing. And his case, it remains open with York Police. If you have any information, no matter how small, please contact North Yorkshire Police at 101 using case number 1-21502-07141. Or you can text the charity Missing People at 116000, referencing case number 15009621, because someone, somewhere, might just hold the answer. It was a Monday morning in the peaceful town of Malton, North Yorkshire. Just another day, or so it seemed. But for Victoria Taylor, a devoted mother, a loving fiancée, and a nurse who touched the lives of many, it was the beginning of a mystery that would leave an entire community heartbroken and searching for answers. At around 9 a.m., Victoria left her home. She was heading toward the Norton Hive Library, something she did often. There was nothing unusual about that morning, but by 11:35 a.m., she was caught on CCTV at a BP garage on Welham Road, buying a drink from the M&S store inside. She was wearing jeans, a black puffer jacket, a camouflage baseball cap, and she was holding a carrier bag tightly against her chest. Not by the handles, not like a typical shopping bag. She was cradling it, like something precious. Just 18 minutes later, 11:53 a.m., new CCTV would show Victoria again. At Malton Bus Station, her final confirmed sighting. She passed a children's play area, and then took a narrow, muddy footpath along the River Derwent. She was alone. And then, she was gone. The alarm was raised quickly. Victoria's family, especially her sisters Emma and Haiti, were devastated. They released a public message. "We currently feel sick, distraught, and lost following the disappearance of Vix. But we're focusing on the children, trying to keep things as normal as possible. We are forever grateful to the volunteers and emergency services helping us search for her." And search they did. Police combed through CCTV. They searched land, riverbanks, and underwater. They spoke to witnesses, followed data trails, but nothing, until they found her belongings. Victoria's backpack, her baseball cap, and empty drink bottles were found near the edge of the River Derwent. Items that weren't hidden, just left behind, exposed in the mud. That's when officers began to fear the worst. Chief Superintendent Fiona Willey said, "We must accept the significant possibility that Victoria entered the river. As the river search intensified, the weather worsened. Heavy rains made the current dangerous. Volunteers were warned, don't risk your lives." Still, the community didn't give up. They put up posters, created a Facebook group with over 10,000 members, held vigils, and a GoFundMe raised thousands to support Victoria's fiancé and her 2-year-old daughter. Then, on October 22nd, the news came. Underwater teams discovered a body in the River Derwent, just a short distance from where her things had been found. While formal identification took time, Victoria's family was informed. A few days later, the police confirmed what everyone feared. It was her. Victoria Taylor is remembered as more than a name in a headline. She was bright, strong, and loved deeply by those around her. A daughter, a sister, a partner, a mother. Her family called her Vix, and their heartbreak echoes through every corner of Malton. Today, police say there's no sign of third-party involvement, no crime, just a tragedy. But Victoria's story doesn't end in that river. Her community, the love shown, the unity in her name, it lives on. She lives on, in the memory of a town that searched, that grieved, and that stood together. Rest in peace, Victoria Taylor. You are not forgotten. It all began in late November 2024. Drogheda, a quiet town in County Louth, suddenly found itself at the heart of a mystery. Anthony Hanlon, 39 years old, gentle, quiet, and kind, disappeared, without a word, without a trace. Anthony wasn't just anyone. He was known to his sister Jessica as someone who, in her words, wouldn't harm a fly. He stood 5'5", slim build, blue eyes, with a soft balding crown of auburn hair, a man with simple habits. He often visited Dublin, and he was just weeks away from moving into his own place before Christmas. On the evening of Tuesday, November 26th, around 7 p.m., Anthony was seen in Drogheda. That was the last local sighting. At first, nothing. No clues, no leads, just worry and questions. Then a glimmer of hope, or perhaps a deeper mystery. On December 3rd, Anthony appeared on CCTV. He was in Dublin, at a PTSB bank on O'Connell Street. He withdrew some cash. He had a coffee in hand. And then, nothing. No phone calls, no texts, no bank activity, no more sightings. Just silence. Jessica, heartbroken but determined, took the search into her own hands. She printed leaflets, walked the streets, asked questions, knocked on doors. A €20,000 reward was offered. The message was clear. Please, help us find him. But as the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, her fears deepened. She said, and it sent chills, I think something sinister has happened. And honestly, who could blame her? As of April 2025, Anthony Hanlon is still missing. Gardaí continue their investigation. They've reviewed footage, spoken to witnesses, and launched appeals to the public. And yet, despite all efforts, no answers. Anthony's disappearance has left a painful silence in his family, in his town, in the hearts of all who knew him. And still, they hold on to hope. Because someone, somewhere, must know something. If you do, no matter how small it may seem, contact Drogheda Garda Station at 041 9874 200 or the Garda Confidential line at 1-800-666-6111. This story isn't over, and Anthony Hanlon deserves to be found. A bright, 26-year-old postal worker from Chicago, Illinois, disappears. No dramatic scene, no cry for help, just gone. Her name was Kierra Coles. And on the morning of October 2nd, 2018, she seemingly vanished into thin air. Now, surveillance footage from a neighbor's home showed a woman walking away from Kierra's apartment near 81st and Vernon. Some believed it was her. But here's where it gets strange. Her family. They say it wasn't Kierra. They're convinced it was actually another postal worker from the neighborhood. Someone who looked similar, but wasn't her. At the same time, police discovered something else. That morning, Kierra called in sick to work. Since then, no messages, no sightings, no answers. Even more disturbing, her car was still in the driveway. Inside, they found her purse, her cell phone, even her lunch, packed and ready like any other day. She hadn't taken a thing. The US Postal Inspection Service quickly got involved, launching a separate investigation and offering a $25,000 reward. Her union added $3,500 more. Still, police say they're not treating the case as suspicious. But Kierra's family, they aren't buying that. Her mother believes something changed in Kierra's life before she disappeared. She'd recently moved out of her childhood home. She was starting fresh, but maybe also feeling overwhelmed. Here's what we know. Kierra is 5'4", around 125 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. She has a heart tattoo on her right wrist, and the words "Lucky Libra" tattooed on her back. When she went missing, she was last seen in her postal uniform. The case is still open, and hope is still alive. If you know anything, even the smallest detail, please call the Chicago Police Special Victims Unit at 312-747-8274 or the Postal Inspection Service at 877-876-2455. You can also submit a completely anonymous tip at cpdtip.com. And Kierra's family, they're still waiting for the answer. Qusay al-Jundi and his friend Mohammed El Aboud thought they had beaten the system. After all, they'd taken the life of Louise Kam in July of 2021 and tried to cover their tracks. But what they didn't realize was that many of their actions were caught on camera, and those cameras would help police crack the case. Louise was 71 years old, a successful businesswoman who had worked hard her entire life. She owned several properties, including a 3-bedroom house in London and a number of apartments. She had built a comfortable, luxurious lifestyle and was now thinking about her legacy. She wanted to sell one of her homes so she could buy a house for her children. At some point, she crossed paths with Al-Jundi. He was just a chef at a local kebab shop. But he presented himself differently. According to police, he had just £13 in his bank account. Yet somehow, he convinced Louise that he was wealthy, even claiming he had a multi-millionaire girlfriend. Al-Jundi spent months gaining her trust, with one goal in mind: to take control of her wealth. But when that plan started to fall apart, he came up with a new one, a far more sinister one. He brought in his friend El Aboud, and together, they set out to take her life. Al-Jundi told Louise he wanted to buy her house and that he had the money to do it. On July 26th, Louise arrived at a rental home in Barnet, expecting to finalize the deal. CCTV captured her walking inside, but tragically, she would never walk out. Not long after, her family and friends began receiving texts from her phone. Louise said she was going on vacation, but then, strangely, the story shifted. Now, she was supposedly on the run, accused of stealing millions from Al-Jundi and fleeing to China to avoid arrest. The messages didn't sit right with her loved ones, and when no one could reach her by phone, they called the police. Investigators pulled CCTV from the Barnet property. They saw both Al-Jundi and El Aboud leaving the house. Shortly after Louise had arrived, her body was later discovered in a trash bin outside of Al-Jundi's home. Surveillance footage showed that white van, presumably moving Louise's remains from the scene of the crime. Other cameras showed the men leaving their workplace with cleaning supplies and Louise's car being moved. It was later sold to an unsuspecting buyer. And what did they do with the money? Al-Jundi didn't hide it very well. In fact, he posted it on TikTok. In one video, he walked through Louise's home, treating it as if it was his own. In another, a dance video filmed outside, with El Aboud wearing new clothes, bought with stolen money. Both men denied any involvement, but DNA evidence, combined with the surveillance footage, told a very different story. They were both found guilty and received life sentences for their horrific crime. Thomas Flood was a quiet, kind-hearted man just 49 years old, from Dublin, Ireland. He lived in the heart of Dublin 1, surrounded by the familiar streets and sounds of the city he called home. Standing just about 5'2", with a medium build, bright blue eyes, and a bald head, Thomas was well known to his neighbors, a man of simple routines and peaceful moments. Thomas had a special connection to nature. He loved visiting places like Howth and Dollymount Strand, spots where the sea breeze could clear your mind, and the coastal paths stretched endlessly under the wide Irish sky. Friends and family say that near the water, Thomas found calm, a place to be still, to reflect. On Sunday, April 16, 2023, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. At exactly 11:02 a.m., Thomas left his home, dressed casually, ready for what looked like a typical quiet day trip. He made his way toward Drumcondra Road Lower and soon arrived at Drumcondra train station. He boarded a city-bound train, arriving at Connolly Station at 11:25 a.m., then transferred onto a DART service heading for Howth, a route he knew well. Thomas boarded the DART at 11:45 a.m., and just after noon, he got off at Howth Station, a popular place, a beautiful place, where many would spend a Sunday afternoon. After getting off the train, Thomas stopped at a shop near the station. He bought a sandwich and 2 bottles of Diet Coke, simple, familiar things. It seemed clear. He planned to enjoy a quiet walk, maybe sit somewhere with a view. He then boarded a Dublin bus from Harbour Road to Thormanby Road, getting off near the Summit pub at 12:42 p.m. Surveillance cameras caught him one last time, walking toward Bailey Green Road, holding a blue plastic shopping bag, likely with his lunch inside. That was the last known image of Thomas Flood. His phone remained active until about 7 p.m. that evening, but no calls, no texts, no contact. His family quickly knew something was wrong. This wasn't like Thomas. He didn't just vanish. A missing person report was filed, and the search began. The Irish Coast Guard, local Gardaí, civil defence teams, community volunteers. They searched with boats, with search dogs, with drones soaring over cliffs and rocky coastlines. Every path, every forested trail was combed through. But despite all their efforts, no trace of Thomas was found. Thomas wasn't famous. He didn't seek attention. But to the people around him, he mattered deeply. A soft-spoken man, polite, reflective, someone who found joy in the simple, peaceful moments that most of us overlook. His disappearance sent shockwaves through his family and the entire community. Thomas wasn't someone who took risks. He wasn't reckless. He just went out for a walk and never came back. As of today, Thomas Flood remains missing. Even after exhaustive search efforts, public appeals, and careful review of every lead, no further clues have emerged. Authorities continue to appeal to the public. If you were in Howth that day, if you saw something, captured a photo, or even recall a small detail, please come forward. A simple sighting, a memory, could be the missing piece his family desperately needs. Thomas's family is still waiting for clarity, for peace, and above all, for Thomas to come home. If you have any information about the disappearance of Thomas Flood, please contact Mountjoy Garda Station at 016668600, the Garda Confidential line at 1800666111, or reach out to any Garda station. April 18th, 2025. A quiet afternoon in Longfield, Kent, the kind of place where not much happens. But that day, something did. Maria Pilgrim vanished. Maria is 56 years old, soft-spoken, private, familiar to a few shopkeepers, and well known in her quiet neighborhood. She stood about 5'5", slim build, reddish hair. That Friday, she was wearing a long dark grey coat, grey trousers, and white flip-flops. In her hand, a black, wheeled shopping basket, the kind you pull behind you. She was last seen around 2:10 p.m., walking along Main Road in Longfield, captured on CCTV, and then just gone. At first, people thought maybe she'd gone to visit someone. Maybe she needed a break. Sometime. But days passed. No word. No calls. No sightings. Her family reported her missing on Wednesday, April 23rd. And suddenly, that quiet village felt a little colder, a little more anxious. Kent police released the CCTV footage. They knocked on doors. They checked nearby routes. They searched. The public was asked, "Have you seen her? Any detail? Anything at all?" But still, no trace. It's now been weeks, and the question remains, where is Maria Pilgrim? Posters are up, people are talking, and there's a feeling, deep down, that something just isn't right. If you know anything, if you were near Main Road that Friday afternoon, or if you think you saw Maria, call Kent Police. Dial 999 and quote reference number 23-1432. And her family? They just want her home. Maria Pilgrim, 56 years old, missing since April 18th, 2025, and still out there, somewhere.